Hi guys, Ronnie here and welcome to the workshop. Today I decided to film a video that might be helpful to quite a lot of you, and it's based on my experiences from the shop this year. So in the past we didn't really deal with used bikes, but as demand kept going up, we decided to offer a service where we sell off the used bikes of customers that get a new bike built from us. And yeah, this has showed me some insights about trading, buying and selling second-hand bikes. So let's just start with and I brought some notes, do not forget anything, with the questions that I often get, or some kind of repeated cliche almost questions which a lot of buyers ask me, but to be honest they're not the right questions to ask, because they really show nothing about the state of the bike. So let's just start with these. So what not to do. And there are some misconceptions regarding this. So a lot of people ask me if there is an original invoice present for the bike, which is a valid question on the grounds that if you suspect that the seller might be some shady individual and got the bike from illicit activity or something like that, it's a prevention for that. But these days I don't think that's particularly on widely used platforms such as eBay, Bicycle, or renowned website, or whatever of a legitimate background. I don't think that's really all that needed. If the bike had multiple owners, it doesn't mean it's a bad bike. You have to judge that by the general state of condition, but the invoice might not be present. Another reason why the invoice might be not present is, for example, I buy the bikes as a dealer, even the bikes I use for myself, so I can't give you the original invoice because these trade prices, are not something that's public. So yeah, also a lot of people search for these original invoices in hope of preserving some kind of warranty, but you're buying a used bike, and I think without exception, any brand that you get into, the warranty only applies for the original owner. So it doesn't matter that you have the invoice. He might be willing to assist you. If it's a shop or a business like we are, might be assist you with dealing with warranty issues even when purchasing a second-hand bike, but it's more of an exception really. So yeah, it's not a bad thing when the documentation is present. Of course, it clears up the history and origin of the bike, but yeah, you have to take that with a grain of salt. Then another thing that I get asked quite a lot is the model year of the bike. And to be honest, I never really found this to be extremely relevant because bike frames are released in generations. So if you got, for example, something commonly known like the Specialized Tarmac SL8 that has been released in 2023, it will go on for the standard product life cycle of 3-4 years. Then it doesn't really matter if you have a bike that's 2023 or 2025 or 6, because it's the same generation. So technically, apart from the colors, nothing really changes on that. As for the hardware side, it's quite rare that brands improve within the year or year-to-year improvements to the bike, because the development costs and the mold costs are relatively high. So it's just not worth it. That's why they have these 3-4 year cycles, and based on that, it doesn't really matter which part of the cycle you choose to buy that bike. The equipment on it might change as you get new group set and part releases, of course, that is true. So that influences the fact, and also it can, of course, the age of the bike itself, and how many hours or how much time has it been ridden, how much it has been used can alter obviously, but also that is not a clear indication. Going back to the first question, if you have the original invoice, you might have basically a model year 2023 bike that was sold in 2025 for some reason. So yeah, this is also something that should be considered. So just the model in itself doesn't really tell the whole story. Then that goes on to another question: how many kilometers has it been ridden? And this is, I think, probably the least informative question that you can ask, because the bike and the main parts on it aren't really consumables or rare items, and unlike with a car, adding mileage to a bike doesn't necessarily detract from the value of it as much as neglect does. Because I had, I basically have my own workshop and my business that focuses on keeping the bikes in top shape. So when I sell a bike that has 50,000 kilometers on it and it has been meticulously maintained, it can be in a better shape. That an amateur who just slaps it at the back of the garage after 2,000 kilometers. And that involves the storage related damage also, and drivetrain related wear and brake wear and stuff like that. So again, you have to look at the bike as a whole picture and not decide based on the kilometers it has ridden. Firstly, on a bike there's no way to verify that, or for any other component there's just no counter or no, someone can track it in their Strava or whatever, but also that can be easily manipulated. So yeah, it's kind of a pointless question, I would say. It doesn't really help you much. The person can say whatever, and it can be an honest thing because they don't know or care about it, but the condition is what you should be looking at. Then another question regarding the fit. So a lot of people ask me if the certain size bike would fit them. To get a better idea, usually I post some measurements, particularly seat height, of how it is set up in the pictures, so it can give some reference to the user. It's quite hard to really make an appropriate suggestion without looking at the person and the bike fit stats. So just based on height, you can of course make or prevent some really wild inadequacies, but the best thing you can do is to just go check the geometry chart of the bike, compare it to your current one, maybe go out to the seller and have a test ride. On bigger size bikes, it's usually a good thing that you have some spacers to play around with in terms of stack height. Smaller size bikes tend to be cut down if properly sized, because you don't really need smaller riders don't really need a huge amount of stack. So yeah, these things should be considered, but the most helpful thing you can do is just to check the model of the bike, its geometry, and compare it to your own bike, your current one, that hopefully is correctly fitted for you. But even if not, you can make an appropriate comparison in a site like Geometry Jigs, for example. It's a really useful tool that I use for myself. Then sometimes I get asked, why am I selling the XYZ bike? And most of the times it's quite obvious from the listing that I do this professionally. So that's a bit silly, but usually the reasons why people sell their bikes are either because they just go out of the sport, which is unfortunate, or most often I would say it's just because they have a new bike that they like and want to buy, or already have a new one as a replacement. And sometimes it's just because they bought a bike and it's not really appropriate for their needs. I see that also quite often as a fitter. So usually these three reasons. Some people also like to ask if the bike has been raced, which again is a bit of a silly question, because yes, racing a bike puts it through kind of a load that you don't really, not really a load, but more of a risk that is elevated compared to just riding alone. However, if the bike hasn't been in a bunch crash, which you can probably tell from repairs and stuff, then again it's the condition that matters, because you can have a bike that's been raced for 3-4 years, complete seasons, and be in pristine condition and extremely well looked after, whereas again you can have the other extreme of a bike that's not raced and that's not been taken care of at all. So that shouldn't be a consideration either. There are times when people ask me for more pictures about a certain bike, which can be for me a little bit puzzling, because usually we upload at least 10 high quality studio pictures like this from a given bike. So if you have that kind of requirement, be sure to specify what you actually want to see, perhaps some measurement or a part, or something specific, not just more pictures, because that's not very helpful for you, because you don't know what you'll be getting, and it's not very helpful for us because we don't know what you're expecting. So that's an important thing that I would like to address. And that actually sums up my points that I wanted to make here. And now I want to go through what you actually need to check. And before I tell you that, I want to make one more kind of a hypothesis, that unlike a car or a motorbike or a home or whatever that you might be buying, a bicycle is not a terribly complicated thing. No matter what condition it is in, most of it can be done away with relatively easily. Now, even when your frame is broken in half, these days there are professional carbon repair shops that can do that, but that's an extreme case. What I want to point out is that there are very few bicycles that are not salvageable in a way that you can bring them to the pristine condition that's very well usable and rideable. The question is, if you balance the cost and the risk of doing it, does it really still stack up in the marketplace? So for me as a dealer, that's a bit easier, because I can solve the issues more easily and more cheaply in a professional way with that relatively little risk. However, if you're a consumer, you need to take into consideration what the bike is at the moment and what you need to change on it, even for reasons if it's worn or just not fitting to you, to make it yours essentially, and if that cost is justified for what the asking price of the bike is. To make this as simple as possible for our own clients, we always sell bikes in a fully serviced state, fully cleaned up, with all the bearings, all the rotating parts, everything really that can be changed, including the bar tape, tires and some cosmetic bits, to make it basically a fresh as new condition, so the buyer doesn't need to think about this. But this is not how a regular consumer would sell his own bike in most cases. So you need to factor all these things that you mentioned into the purchase price, and then see if that price stacks up. So having said that, the things I check that are the most important are the what I call non-wear items. So these are things that ideally you may need to replace unless there's a crash. So that's the frame, fork, the rims if it's a disc brake bike, hubs, cranks, and the non-wear related parts of the group set, like the brake hoods, brake calipers, derailleurs, and yeah, that's pretty much it. All the other stuff, all the wear items, so the brake pads, the tires, tubes, if there are any, chain, cassette, chain rings, and all the wear items, these are subject to what I've been talking about earlier. So you need to compare what the state of the bike is. It's good to have a chain checker around. And one valid question actually that you can ask the buyers and can influence the state of the bike a whole lot is what type of lubrication has been using on the chain, because using a bad one can really wreak havoc on the system and just ruin it in a few thousand kilometers, so that's important. And also where and how has it been serviced. So yeah, that's the actual important thing that you need to factor in when buying second-hand. And the biggest telltale sign of how a bike has been looked after is just how it's presented, how clean it is. Because there are some typical bikes that we see come here that you can tell that it's never been properly washed, and that's not a good sign, because then it's likely that most wear items for the drivetrain need to be changed, and that's getting expensive, particularly at retail level. So yeah, these are the important factors to consider. Yeah, if the bike is in top race ready showroom condition, then you can assume that it's been like that for most of its life, even though it had a demanding life, lots of kilometers racing, etc. Really, just to sum up this whole thing, the one single metric that matters in a used bike is the condition. All the other arbitrary things like kilometers and the year and stuff are, in my book at least, that's not what I've been looking for. But yeah, state of the drivetrain, etc., that definitely helps more. How to judge that? That's a more difficult topic, and you need some technical know-how to be able to evaluate these things, and also some experience. So someone like us, a local bike shop, service, whatever, can certainly help you with that if you're not confident in doing it on your own. So yeah, that's what I had in mind regarding this topic of used bikes. I hope you have found some of it informational or helpful. If yes, then feel free to share it to your friends and those who are planning to buy a bike near you. And if you want to see more of this and how we take care of our bikes, my bikes, then stay tuned for future videos. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.